We all remember exactly where we were when we heard the news that Darryl Sutter had been fired.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me here today. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Today, we are going to be taking a look back at what led up to Darryl Sutter's firing, what kind of transpired in the locker room and on the ice, as well as the transition into the Craig Conroy and Ryan Huska era, and then taking a look at the longer term picture, because at the end of the day, we know what the Flames are, and now it's time to get to work. But before we do any of that, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. Today, May 1st, marks 1 year since the Flames announced that they had fired Darryl Sutter. And this was very, people didn't think Murray Edwards was going to pull the trigger on this, because he was basically going to be paying, if he fired him, he was going to basically be paying Darryl Sutter $4 million to go sit at home, to go back to Viking and tend to the cows, because he had another year left on his deal. And we all know how cheap Murray Edwards is. He's not going to just hold on to money or rather dish money out for the sake of doing that. But this came after a season of missing the playoffs by 2 points, everyone underperforming. Tyler Toffoli was the only player to really have a good year, and then you traded him. And then there were rifts in the room. There were rumors about it, and no one could confirm or deny it in the middle of the season. And then, allegedly, after exit interviews, 7 players had requested trades. And then, so I still remember this. It was like the end of the season, they did their exit interviews, and a graphic went up on all of the NHL rumor blogs, Instagram, Twitters, saying that 7 Flames players had supposedly requested a trade if Darryl Sutter was not fired. And then they fired him like a week later, and every one of those players had supposedly rescinded their trade request, which is very ironic. And, you don't know if that's 100% true. I'm sure that some trade requests did come, but I don't know about 100% of them being rescinded. And it was a brutal year. The season could not end fast enough. And, you have a coach that really didn't respect, like there wasn't any sort of mutual respect between the coach and the entire locker room, or the entire locker room in the coach. Players kind of pointed the finger at Sutter in one way or another, and it kind of came out from the fans too. And I just remember how weird it was after Jacob Pelletier's debut, when he was like, what was his number again? And then it reminded me again of when Gaudreau played his 500th game the season before. He was like, oh, well, he certainly didn't play like it was his 500th game. Okay, like, can you just be, no one's asking you to, praise this player to the end of the world, but like, can you just give something like, oh, that's quite an accomplishment, something, But we learned that Darryl Sutter was not afraid to play mind games. And Tyler Toffoli went on a podcast and talked about how he would threatened to pull Jacob Markstrom after one period, and it would be tied. It'd be scoreless. And then he'd be grumbling about, oh, we're going to go to Winsport. We're going to go to Winsport. You really want to go all the way to Winsport, which is apparently a practice facility like 30 minutes away. So, and I'm going to believe that it wasn't just the goaltenders either, simply because if there's no reason to single out the goaltenders. Yeah, the goaltending stunk. It reeked like hot garbage left in a car, but there was no reason for it to just be them when the entire team was underperforming. And I'm very glad that the decision was made to fire him. It was the vibes, and like we talk about vibes all the time, and like, you know, essentially it's one of those like intangible things, but the vibes were rancid. We talk about how you know, the Coyotes and how like just the turmoil that was there, and how that has culminated into this culture of whatever that was, and now it's in Utah. But you know, you have to have something, some sort of reason to want to stay and to play for this team. And I'm sorry, but didn't really sound like anyone wanted to show up to work and play. So we had players say that, you know, I wanted hockey to be fun again. There were media members that said it actually looked like they were having fun on the ice. It's like there was like life breathed back into the room this season. And that's important because there is no point. There's no fun. There's no reward for showing up and just having this dark cloud over, like, looming over you, and just having to walk on eggshells constantly, regardless of how good you do perform. And I'm glad that, you know, Murray Edwards did take things into his own hands and said bye. And there was also the rift with Brad Treliving and Darryl Sutter, and how Treliving had gone to Edwards in the middle of the season and said, I want to fire him. And Murray Edwards said no. Like, there were so... I need like a flow chart of the Sutter era. That was one way to start off the post-Gaudreau and Tkachuk era. I'm going to be real honest. That was quite the way. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the second season of the post-Gaudreau and Tkachuk era, and just how Ryan Huska has transitioned into head coach after being an assistant coach for quite some time. And we will be right back after this. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. I love using the Gametime app because I really can get the best deals to go to, whether it be the Red Sox or if I want to travel to see the Flames. I can get exactly what I want at a price I will feel very happy with. And your purchase with Gametime is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube, so you never miss any of the action. It was almost a year ago, too, that Ryan Huska was hired. Next month will be, so the middle of May will be Craig Conroy's 1 year, and then about a month later, Ryan Huska was hired. So we're like, I don't know how the calendar moves so fast. I don't, because I feel like the season really just started, and we're already here in May, and the second round of the playoffs are about to start. But the head coaching search or really the general manager search took precedent, obviously, because your general manager is going to bring in his guys, his cabinet of people, if you will. And Conroy named the head coach, I believe it was a month and a week after. Actually, no, it was like 3 weeks after he was hired, because Conroy was hired the weekend I went to Taylor Swift, which was May 20th. And then Huska was hired June 12th. Okay, sorry. Got to get those timelines right. And it was really down between, I guess, a few really just like internal candidates for coaching. It was either going to be Mitch Love or Ryan Huska. Huska had coached the AHL affiliate for a while. He'd coached and developed Mangiapane, Rasmus Anderson, Oliver Shillington, and then he had made the jump to become the assistant head coach. And it was a clean slate for everyone. You know, you have a new general manager who is ready to work. He has done he was an internal hire as well. So it was 10 years of watching what went wrong and what not to do, and what to do, and, where to improve on things. And then Huska has such like a different approach, and you can still be an effective coach by not being a hard ass, I guess. Because, you don't need to have that Darryl Sutter attitude in order to be a good coach. You obviously, it's like, I think how you carry yourself matters. And I think how you talk to the media matters. But, what Huska did this year, it was not an easy challenge. This was not his mess to clean up. He watched it all unfold. I mean, he clearly wanted to inherit it, so he did just that. But Huska, it was very much he was approaching this from a different view and a different mindset. This wasn't everybody plays the same type of hockey the same way. This is a cookie cutter recipe system, like everything has to be the same. No, he knew that, there's obviously older veterans on this team that can do things a lot more efficiently than these young kids. And maybe that's okay. Because if a kid goes out and makes a mistake, you don't need to bench them. Turnovers happen. Crappy zone entries happen. As we watched, the neutral zone play this season was nauseating. Trying to get them to move through the neutral zone, honestly, was like trying to get like a 2-month-old baby to crawl. You couldn't do it at some points. It just did not happen. But Huska he had a much more calm demeanor. And to me, I appreciate that, because I think that you can get your message across effectively and more effective. Because if you're all the way up here, I don't hear you. All I hear is that you're yelling. But But if you're like, okay, we got to go out, you do this, you do that, we're going with this for the power play. Like, that is more effective to me. But you can still raise your voice, because sometimes that helps. Sometimes that's like the wake-up call, because you're not always at that level. So clearly something's wrong if you're at that level. But, we obviously didn't see inside the locker room. But things did feel better. They weren't winning. That is for certain. I think they had 3 wins after the trade deadline. Not good. Not very good at all. But, it was one game at a time. And that's what they needed to do. They needed to just get it over with. And they couldn't be at the beginning of March looking at the start of April in the last game against, the Coyotes. Couldn't do that. And I think Huska had a tall task, and he still does. His main priority this past season was to get more out of Huberdeau and Kadri. I think he did that. Yes, Huberdeau had a drop off in points again, but I think that we saw Huberdeau become, he wasn't afraid to kind of throw his body around, which we've never seen. He plays a gentleman's game. He does not throw hits. He never got physical. But this year he did bring that element to his game. And it was quite interesting, really. Kind of refreshing to see, because you really don't see that from him. But Kadri had one heck of a season. He finished with 29 goals, and he had a great season centering 2 very young, promising players that weren't expected to be NHL regulars this year, with Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil. There were injuries. There were other unprecedented things, like your defenseman who was expected to come back from his mental health leave, and then he had a setback. So you had to readjust and recalibrate that. And I think that this organization does deserve a lot of credit for what they've done with the Shillington situation. We don't know the extent of the details, but you can tell that they handled it with care. And I think that's how we need to navigate mental health in this sport, especially moving forward, I guess. I looked in a few spots, and I could not find the length of Huska's contract anywhere. I don't believe it was released in the original press release. It's not on Cap Friendly. It looked in like 8 different articles. No one had it. So, I mean, I would assume it was like a 1-year thing, and then like a trial, and be like, hey, like there's like a 2nd-year option sort of deal to bring him back. But obviously, I think this is Huska's team. He has a vision. This is his project. He is elbow deep in this mud, and I don't know what more you can expect. Like, a coach can only do so much, right? We know that Huska loved throwing the lines in the blender, but there was nothing to lose. There was nothing to lose at that point. And Nick and I talked a lot about that towards the end of the season. Like, just give us whatever you can for variables, different sample sizes, like anything, because you don't know what might hit and what you could try next season when there's more time. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the future and what the crystal ball holds. But before we do that, we are going to take a quick break, and I want to talk to you about one of my favorite games. All right, pause. We're going to take a quick second here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there is so much more good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool playing pieces to travel boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constant changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. Get off the bench and go download it now, free on Apple, at the Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at JessBelmosto. Looking at the long-term plan for players is a lot easier because you have an idea of how long they could actually be here. Because, you look at the Kadri contract, and, that's not getting traded unless a miracle happens. That Huberdeau contract is not getting traded. There's no, you can trade Mangiapane. That's probably what's going to happen. In 10 months from now, we're probably going to be talking about that. And with coaching, everything kind of depends on the vibes and how things go. Because, with Darryl Sutter, he had that fantastic season with the team. It was, a great playoff run. And then things changed over the summer with losing 2 star players. But you brought in Jonathan Huberdeau. But then your team just kind of, it didn't go anywhere but south. And the energy shifted. There was a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of negativity that you just couldn't shake. And they went the whole season with that. And it was not fixable. The expectation going into that season was to make the playoffs. You were replacing Johnny Gaudreau with a player who had just had the same amount of points. They both tied for 115 points, which is bananas to think about for both of those players and how things have looked with their respective new teams. But the expectation was to still have a good hockey team. Did not happen. And now things have changed. And Huska really has his work, even more work cut out for him now, because you lost a lot of the players that were good. He lost more good players in obviously Toffoli. Zadorov was a big dude. Tanev, Hanifin, Lindholm when he was on his game. And you have to make up for that somehow. And this year, the Flames obviously didn't make the playoffs. And if they did, it was not going to be pretty. It was going to be ugly. It was going to stink. And I don't think that's an exaggeration, because look at how they finished their season. Just was not good. And now you have more holes in your lineup that can be replaced, that can be shifted around. You can just try to make it work and ride this out. And I don't think the expectation, barring some magnificent trade, acquisition, free agent signing, miracle by a higher power, you shouldn't expect the Flames to make the playoffs. You shouldn't, because they don't have what it takes to compete, really, to consistently compete. You need to have defense. That is a very good start for the Flames. You need to have some defense. Defense went missing. Absolutely obsolete after the trade deadline. And shouldn't say that. Mackenzie Weegar, king. But like there's so many things that just have to improve in order for this team to make the playoffs and to really compete. You can make the playoffs. Look at the Washington Capitals. They made the playoffs and had the worst goal differential. And then they got swept. There is a special disappointment that happens when you miss the playoffs, right? After thinking you'd make it. There's a special disappointment that happens when you are a first-round exit. And, like, you just spent another week in your season doing what exactly? If guys put off surgery, get less rest. Like, to me, I would rather not make the playoffs. And, yeah, anything can happen, but I don't think we need to waste our time and energy pretending that things can go further than they actually can. Could the Flames have beat the Oilers 2 years ago? Maybe. But they didn't. They didn't. So we'll never know. And, you know, the Panthers got lucky last year too. By a grace of God, they won in overtime in Game 7 in the first round, and then they just built off of that. But then they're strapped with injuries, and then guys aren't ready to start the season. You can have whatever expectations you want. This is a safe space. If you think that this team can win a Stanley Cup, I want whatever dilution drink you're drinking. Because that, I don't know. This current roster is not built to make the playoffs. And if they do, it's going to be a Washington Capitals situation. I could see them potentially making the playoffs if they tighten up the defense, they sign a free agent or two that can close the gap, someone that can score. You know, if Kuzmenko spends a whole season here and has a great offensive year, again, great. Do not throw a checkbook at him come next summer, though. He's going to be 29 at that point. You have to look at Mangiapane, too. Like, you hope that this team does take steps to get better. But the steps don't happen immediately. Ryan Huska is going to have to take his lumps. This team has to take their lumps, and those lumps are just starting. And I'm interested to see how the draft goes. Like, we know that Chicago or San Jose is picking first overall. The Flames likely aren't moving up from the 9th spot, but it's not the end of the world. I mean, really, like, of course you'd like to pick number 1, but, like, the 9th is a lot better than the 16th, the 17th, the 13th that they picked out a few years ago and ended up getting Coronado. So, like, there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of you just have to ride it out. I think we'll have a better idea of this roster, obviously, after July 1st. I might expect some trades leading up to the draft. That's what I said last year because I thought that they were going to trade Dan Vladar, and I was very wrong about that. But I don't know, maybe with Craig Conroy and Ryan Huska on the same page, moving forward now that the team has declared itself, there's reasons to be more proactive in these moves early in the offseason. But that'll do it for me here today, folks, because we are running out of time, and I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you for making Locked On Flames part of your day, whether you are an everyday listener or tune in occasionally. Thank you so much. Like I said, I will be back tomorrow revisiting some more player reviews, and until then, stay safe, stay warm, stay dry. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, and I will see you later.